Welcome to this video. We are going to be looking at Git and GitHub projects. In part one of the video, we went through Git and GitHub concepts and why they are important in the world of software development lifecycle. Now here we are going to see exactly how to execute Git and GitHub in different projects. We're looking at the agendas here. We're going to start with introducing Git. We're going to see how to install Git. Next, we understand about the Git lifecycle. Lifecycle is something that you need to know, so we're going to have a good overview of it. We'll also look at the branching in Git. We'll look at the importance of branches, creating branches, switching between branches. We'll also look at how to manage repositories, specifically the Git repositories. We're going to create a brand new repository, and at the same time, we are going to be working with an existing repository. We'll continue and look at the collaboration with Git. We'll look at some of concepts that are very important, such as Git pull, Git fetch, and Git merge. We'll also look at how to handle conflict if it happens when using Git. There are some best practices that you must observe when using Git. You have to know how to protect the Git branches, and this is done in GitHub. If you don't know what Git and GitHub are, you should go to video 1 and you can see exactly the concept behind these two tools. We're also going to be looking at the pull request, which is very important for collaboration purposes. We'll look at some of the version control essentials, things that are very important, such as Git tag, Git commit, and Git history. And as we continue, in the end, we are going to look at the Git rebase. Git rebase is an advanced Git concept. So it's very important for us to, first of all, understand the most important and basic component of Git and GitHub before we can go to Git rebase. Now here we look at the introduction. In the introduction, we are focusing on installation of Git. We're going to install Git first of all. Here we are looking at installation of Git in Windows. Windows is one of the operating systems that are highly used today. To be able to do so, I have provided a link here, and this link is also going to be in the video description section. If you click on it, it's going to open and will automatically bring you to this page. And now from this page is very simple. You just need to click on this section. This is exactly what you can see in my notes. As you can see, this is the same window. So you click on download for Windows because we are using Windows. If you have your laptop, if you are using Mac OS, I believe you should have an option to do that, but most of us are using Windows. So therefore, we're going to go with this part of installation. You come here and you decide which installer you want to use. For my case, I'm going to go with 64-bit. And this is what is compatible with the kind of computer that I have. Now, from this point, it's just a matter of following the instruction that of course, is going to take you from one, of course, instruction on how to install everything. You're going to follow all the way until you are able to finish and complete the installation process. When you are done with installation, for my case, I don't need to install Git. I already have it. You're going to come here to the start, and then you can search. If you say Git, of course, if you have it installed, it's going to open like this. You can just click on open, and this is what you expect to see. I'm going to increase the font size by simply doing Control+. As you can see now, we have a terminal here. This terminal is a bash terminal for Git. I can type an input, and this input should give me exactly something. And I can see that today is Sunday, December 31st, 10/19, 13 Eastern Time, 2023. So this is the input, this is the output. So now, if you can see this terminal and you can be able to type the command date and you can get the output, you're good to go. We are done with installing Git in Windows. However, there is something I need you to install, which we are going to use a lot, and that is what we call the Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio Code is usually a code editor. It's very nice because it is a combination of three things. Let's look at the pictures they are giving us here. I'm going to open this one. And as you can see, it has a very beautiful interface. This interface consists of three things. We have the editor on top, and of course, we have the terminal here. As you can see, we have the terminal at the bottom. And then you can also be able to view your folders, or what we call the working directory on this side. And in addition to that, we do have other plugins here that can help you, especially with the process of writing your code the best way possible. For instance, if I'm preparing what we call infrastructure as code, I can come here and install a plugin for Terraform, or I can install a plugin for Python, and it's going to make my work very easy to type the code that pertains to the infrastructure as code, or maybe something to do with Python. So this is something that I would like you to install. To install is very easy. You're going to come to this page, back. This is the page. Again, the link to this, I'm going to put it in the video description. When you click on it, of course, it knows exactly that you're using Windows as an operating system. You're just going to click on it and download it. And when you're done, again, you can come to the start and you type Visual Studio Code, and you're going to see it open here. Then you can open it. You can open a new window. And when you open a new window, this is how it looks like. As I was saying before, here you can see that we do have, you can come here to this dot. It's not a must that yours is going to have a dot. Mine have dot because I have a bigger font size. If I reduce the font size, I can be able to see all these features. So now when it open like this, it's a very straightforward thing. You just need to come to terminal. You go to the new terminal. Again, let's come back here, click on this, come to new terminal. And when you open new terminal, it's going to look like this. You can close the one that you don't want. And here you have a terminal. Now, this is something that is very interesting. As you can see now, I want you to pay attention to the PowerShell here on your right-hand side. You can see that we have a plus sign here. If you click on this arrow that is pointing down, you can see that we do have other terminals that are available for you to use. And because we installed Git, now you can see that the Git bash is also here. This Git bash is very similar to what we installed. It's still a terminal, and we're going to use it a lot here. So those two came together. So now we do have our Git bash here in our Visual Studio Code. We are going to use it a lot. Make sure before you continue, you have your Visual Studio Code installed, you have the Git installed, and you can be able to come to this section, and you can see that you do have the PowerShell terminal, you do have the Git bash, and you can be able, of course, to use it and see exactly like what I have here. I'm going to exit. We are done with this. We are done with this. These links are going to be in my video. So you just have to go to the description section and you'll be able to see those links. We are done with installing Git in Windows, so we move next. The other thing we're going to do is that we are going to install Git in Linux. Why is Linux? Linux is very important, as we know. It's one of the most powerful operating systems that are used specifically in the enterprise environment. When we talk about enterprise, we are talking about in the company's level, organization. They use Linux a lot. Linux, because it's an open source, it means that you don't need to be licensed to be able to use it. Unlike other operating systems such as Windows, it has so many distributes, or what we call distros, or what we call flavors. One of the most famous flavors is what we call Ubuntu. We do have another one called CentOS, Debian, Amazon Linux too. We do have Debian. We do have Red Hat. All those are distros, distribute of Linux. We are going to go with Ubuntu. And you might be asking yourself, why Ubuntu? One, Ubuntu has a very nice interface. Second, it is very user-friendly. So when we use it, it's always going to be giving us some prompt. Like if you don't know whether something is installed, Ubuntu has the ability to give you some clues on what to do or how to install the plugin that you are looking for. So it's very helpful. Also, when you look at the enterprise level, you're going to see that at least, I don't have statistics now, but the last time I checked, I saw that at least 34% of organizations are using Ubuntu. Of course, the second famous one is CentOS, and there is a difference between the two. I'm not going to cover that because I do have videos and also other recording that have covered what we call operating system. I'm going again to put that link in this video, and you can go and get conversant with what we call operating system. The one that I used a lot and why companies go for Ubuntu and not CentOS, why other companies go for CentOS and not Ubuntu. Now, for you to be able to use Linux, specifically Ubuntu distros, you need to have Ubuntu with you. In this course, we use AWS. AWS is a cloud provider. Of course, it's a public one, but you can go inside and you can create your own private cloud inside of it, and you can use it in accordance to your own will. Now here, if I was to take you through the whole process, of course, creating an instance is nothing but is a server, specifically Ubuntu instance. It's going to take us about 52 minutes. I'm not going to do that because I already have a recording that specifically covers exactly how to go open an account with AWS, jump inside, go and create an instance, go through all the processes of creating an instance, and of course, be able to SSH into the instance using Visual Studio Code as the SSH client. This video is very helpful. This link is also going to be included in the description section of this video. So you just need to come here, look at it before, of course, you can continue from here and make sure that you're able to provision your instance before you move forward. Now, in my case, this is my AWS. I'm not going to explain anything here because, again, you have to watch the video if you are new to AWS. And from there, of course, you can be able to come to this section where you can be able to create your own instance. Now, this is what we call the EC2 console. You're going to see that when you get to AWS, it's divided into consoles. These consoles, of course, contain it's nothing but just section of the services. This console is for EC2 and all the other related services to EC2. So now here you can get any service that is actually related to the instance of what we call EC2. In this case, I do have an instance that is running, but I can't see it, or I see it here, but there is a way you can filter things. AWS make your work very simple. I can come here and say, I want to do instance state, the state in which the instance is in. As far as I put colon, I can be able to select any state. As you can see, I want to select the running state. And if I do that, I'm able to see exactly the instance that is running at the moment. Now, again, when you watch the video, you'll be able to get up to this point. It's not that difficult. What I'm going to do here is highlight the instance. As you can see, my instance has public IPv4, which means I can be able to access this instance on the internet. Now, what do? From here, I want to just SSH. SSH, again, I have a video that has covered SSH in details. It's just a way that you are able to remotely access an instance because, of course, this instance is in Ohio. I can't go all the way to Ohio to connect with this instance. I need to connect to this instance through the internet, and that is what we call the SSH protocol. Now, we're going to go and connect. And of course, there are many ways you can do that. If you don't know how to do SSH, if you don't have SSH client and you don't know exactly how you can SSH into this instance, straight from SSH client such as Poly or maybe Visual Studio Code, which we are going to use a lot in our case, you can simply come here and say EC2 instance connect. Now from here, you just need to say connect. And if everything is working as it should, and you follow the video that I gave you, you should be able to see that now we have an inbuilt terminal by AWS, and you can easily connect and do some of the things that you need to do in the instance without necessarily having to go to your SSH client that is external, such as Visual Studio Code or Poly, to do the same thing. Now, with this one, I can type date and I can see exactly what the date today. But again, you have to realize that this might give me a different kind of date. Specifically, in our case, it's giving us what we call UTC. We clear the terminal. Again, these are what we call commands. They are nothing but they are Linux commands. Again, I have a video that has covered most of them. You have to watch the video, of course, to know what these commands means. I do have also a list of all the commands that are very important, especially to a DevOps engineer. That list, again, I can include it in the description of this video. Now, from here, you can do anything. You can become the root again. You need to understand these commands. But again, this is how you become the root. You have more power, and you can be able to install, and of course, run processes that require more permission. Now, but this is not how I want us to do because you are limited here. I like to use Visual Studio Code because it gives me more features that I can use and which make my work easier. Visual Studio Code is used a lot, especially in the enterprise environment for the purpose of preparing the project and also for the SSH purposes. So we're going to go back to our instance. And again, we'll highlight the instance. We'll go to connect. And here, we'll select SSH client. When you do so, there are a few steps that you must follow. Again, these are steps that are covered in the video that you need to watch to be able to get to this point. In this case, I'm just going to come here and copy this, which is the SSH command. As you can see, is SSH, which must, of course, must start with that because what we are doing here is that we are carrying out the SSH protocol. Then we have -i, which is nothing but is just describing the name of the file where we can find our password, which is encrypted. And this file has a name called git-practice.pem. If you don't have this file in you, in the folders you are going to see from the video, you'll not be able to SSH. So this is very important. Then, of course, we have the username, and the username is Ubuntu. This is what we call a DNS. You can also come and replace this DNS with your public IPv4 address. We saw that when I was looking at the instance. You saw the public IPv4 address. So you can use it instead of using the DNS. Now, to copy this, you can click here and it can copy to the clipboard. You come back to your SSH client. If you are not, it's not a must, of course, you use Visual Studio Code. You can use Poly. You can use any, but for my case and the video that I have given you, we are going to be using Visual Studio Code. So this is why we installed Visual Studio Code before. Now, all we need to do is to open it. As you can see, it's going to open like this. We need to open it. But before we open it, because I can see that I don't have my git-practice.pem, which means that if I try to come and SSH, I'll not be successful to do so. So what I need to do is very simple, and this again will be covered in the video. You just need to come to your folder or file explorer. This is the file explorer you need to come to. You need to come to the desktop, and in the desktop, you can create a folder. For your case, if you don't have the folder, you can create a folder and you can move your PEM key inside of that folder. For my case, I do have a folder, and in this folder, if I look at it, I can see my PEM key inside of it. So since I already have the folder, it becomes very easy for me. Now, what I need to do is to come here to the git practice-today, git-practice-today, and I need to just come and right click on it. When I right click on it, this small window is going to open. In this small window, what I need to do is to go to show more options. It's not a must that yours is gonna look like this. Yours might be able to show you git bash immediately. So you don't need to go to more options. The reason I'm looking for more options is because I want to find the git bash, because I want to open this folder using the git bash that we installed. Now, and of course, you get the git bash after installing the git. So immediately you install git in your system, you are going to get this terminal called git bash. Now, all I need to do is to click on it, and it's going to open again. We saw this. It's going to open this terminal. I'm going to increase the font size by just doing Control+. Now here, I can do ls. Again, this is a command you need to know. It is used specifically, of course, to list the content in a folder. How do I know it's a folder? This is a folder. And as you can see, this is a path. It is actually in OneDrive. We created this in the desktop, and this is the name of the folder. So if I do ls, I'm able to see git-practice.pem. So my PEM key is actually here. But again, I can do SSH through this terminal, but I want to use a Visual Studio Code. So there is something you need to know. There is a command you can use to be able to connect to Visual Studio Code. And that command is code space dot. If I enter, going to see what will happen. Is going to open a new window here. This is a new window for Visual Studio Code. So that command took me directly to Visual Studio Code. And as you can see, now I do have my folder that I created in the desktop. And inside the folder, I can see my PEM key. This is a condition that you must fulfill for you to be able to SSH into the Ubuntu server that you created on AWS. Now, what do I do from here? From here, I can come to this and I can select terminals, new terminal. I can open one, I can close this, or I can minimize this space on this side or on my left-hand side. Of course, you can see here, if I click on this file, it's gonna open at the top, and these are the features I was talking about. So now you can see that this is the editor part of it, because I can edit this PEM key, but I'm not going to edit, because if I edit, I will not be able to SSH. You can see that on this section, we have Explorer, which can help us to explore the files and folders that we have. On this section, we do have ability to have plugins, debug, and do all that. And then here at the bottom, on this side, you can see that we do have what we call the terminals. We can use PowerShell, we can use other kind of terminal, but in our case, we can use a Git bash terminal, because the Git bash terminal is going to allow us to be able to type the bash commands. And bash, of course, is a famous language, specifically when you're using Linux. We can close this section because we already see we have everything we need. And now from here, we can clear the terminal. You can also increase or decrease the font size, not the font size, but the size of the terminal. You can move it up or you can move it down. Let's clear this. Now, at this point, I can return back to AWS. Go back here. Now we can just copy this command. We come back here and we just paste it and we enter. Of course, it's taking some time. And immediately you can see, I'm going to reduce the font size a little bit. Yes. So now you can see that I'm now inside Ubuntu. How do I know I'm inside Ubuntu? I can see the username here, and this is actually the IP address. But this IP address is actually the private one. Why am I able to see the private IP address that starts with 10? Because I have been able to log in or to SSH and enter inside the Ubuntu instance that we created on AWS. Let's come back to AWS. Let's return back to the instance. As you can see, this is the instance, and you can see now, let's go back to the terminal here. You can see this IP address here. You can also come back to AWS and you can see it. This is the private one. We are able to see it because now we have been able to SSH, and through a secure process, we can now be able to communicate and carry out our activities on this instance. Now, clear this. Going to clear the terminal so that we have a good working space. Now, what we need to do is to become the root. If I type, if I come here and say, let's look for pwd, I'm going to see that I'm home Ubuntu. This is nothing but is the printing working directory. If I say, who am I? I'm going to see that I'm the user Ubuntu. When you are the user Ubuntu, it's going to be difficult for you to install processes because you don't have all the permission you need. Therefore, we need to become a user that has more permission so that we can be able to do more activities in this instance. To be able to do that, we can use a command called sudo, which stands for super user do, and we can say we want to switch user. Switch user is just a short form of switch user, which is su. You enter, and of course, now you can see there are a few things that have been able to change. As you can see, we were $sign before, now we are $sign. Let's say, who am I? As you can see now, you are the root. You are no longer Ubuntu user. And immediately you see this, you can now start to work. You can now start to work on the next thing in our project. So we go back to the project. We have been able to do all that. If you are up to this stage, you are doing a good job. So now we go back to the presentation and we come here and check exactly what we need to do. Again, these are commands you need to master. This is how we are going to install Git in Linux. First of all, we had, of course, to be able to get a Linux operating system, and we did that on our AWS. After being able to do that, you still have to know exactly how to SSH. And we say that SSH is a secure way to connect to the instance remotely. After doing that, then we have, of course, to carry out a series of commands. These commands are what we call making sure that your system is up to date, making sure that you're able to upgrade the packages, making sure you're able to clean the system, and making sure you're able to remove the old plugins. And after doing those 4 commands, we can now go ahead and install Git. Now, you might be asking yourself, why are we using apt? I just want you to understand that apt is nothing but it's just a package manager in Ubuntu. If you want to manage anything to do with installation, anything to do with packages, you must use apt. So now, of course, the system is always updating. Apt-get is usually the older version. It's an older command. The new one only use apt, but whenever we are doing update, upgrade, auto clean, and auto remove, I usually suggest you still use the apt-get. Now, let's start with the first one. We are going to update the system. What does this mean? It means we want to make sure that all the packages that we need in this system, because of security purposes or because of any update that might be coming from the Linux or Ubuntu distros developers, we have all those packages in place. To do that, again, we're just going to come back here and we'll type the command apt get update, and then you enter. When you enter, of course, it's going to this to a process of checking all the packages to make sure that all the packages we need to upgrade are available. So it's fetching some of them. Just gonna give it some time. And as you can see, it's reading all the packages. Now, after here, all we need to do is to go ahead and upgrade. Again, we're just gonna type the same command, but because we are dealing with upgrading, which means that we might be installing new packages, we need to use this -y. -y is nothing, but it's just what we call, it's just a confirmation, because when a system is going to be installing packages, it's always going to be asking you for confirmation of yes or no. To automate that process, you can just put -y. I'm not gonna put -y. I'll leave it like that and you can see exactly what I mean. You can see now here we are being asked a question. Do you want to continue? And the answer is yes. If we had put -y, we don't need to answer this question. So I'm going to say no. And when I say no, it's going to stop. And then I'll come back, record the command and put -y and enter. And as you can see now, that question has been skipped. This is going to become a very vital concept, specifically when we are writing the bash script.